A very good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to this second session's Meet the Expert. Today we are talking about the safety assurance, operationalizing regulations and standards. And my name is Hiroki, and today I'm your moderator. Some remarks before we start. Please all turn off your microphone and your camera. We will have some presentations for the first 45 minutes of this meeting, and afterwards we will answer as many as possible of the questions you ask in the Q&A. You can put all the questions during the meeting in the Q&A. We will be able to see them, and we will try to answer them in the final 10 minutes of this meeting. Afterwards, we will also send around the recording of this meeting, and we will try to answer even more questions from the Q&A. So what's the program of today? Olaf will start with a short introduction to safety assurance. Then Erwin de Gelder will talk about the regulations and standards. We have a guest, Hiroki NAKAMURA from JARI, and he will talk about the Japanese AD safety assurance regulations and standards. And then afterwards, Erwin will talk about the opportunities, and we will close this session with the Q&A. So I would like to give the word to Olaf, the Senior Consultant on Scenario-Based Safety Assessment and Methods at TNO.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Hiroki. Yeah, today my task is to give a short introduction to the main topic. The main topic of today will be standards and regulations around safety assurance of automated driving. And I would like to do that by reflecting on our webinar that we had on June 3rd, the first in this series. And there we discussed safety assurance of automated driving systems, and especially the complexity around answering the question whether an automated driving system is safe or unsafe. That is a complex question because of the ecosystem that the AD system needs to work in. So automated driving, we will see that also in this session, is developing quickly. So the system architecture of automated driving is already very complex. The complexity is further enhanced because of the interactions that the system has with the environment at one hand, and the driver on the other hand. So there's, in most of these systems, still a human driver is there interacting with the vehicle, and that system, the system of a human driver and AD driver needs to be able to deal with all the situations that occur and the variations in these situations in the real world. And providing an answer and assuring that that system is capable of dealing with all these situations in a safe way, even before the system is put on the road, that is the topic that we are discussing in this series. So what did we learn from the first Meet the Expert session? Well, first we discussed different concepts of safety for automated driving systems. We were also then happy to have a guest from Volvo Cars, Michael Jung-Oost, who shared, let's say, the considerations that Volvo takes in developing AD systems. And he mentioned that specifically for the safety argumentation, there are two points that need to be dealt with. First of all, an AD system should not repeat the errors that humans possibly make on the road. In that way, we could, let's say, move away from the typical human errors that cause conflicts on the road. But on the other hand, a new system is being introduced, so we should avoid that this system that is being developed also makes new, let's say, robot type of errors. Safety assessment was also put in a safety 2 perspective. Actually, that is a concept that is about 10 years old, where we make a distinction between safety 1, avoiding that things go wrong, and safety 2, which indicates that we look to the capability of a system to deal with all the possible variations in operation, making sure that as many things as possible go right. And for AD systems, that is something really to consider in addition to the safety 1 perspective. Now, how do we deal with that? It was already mentioned that we do the evaluation of the safety of the system based on a scenario. So there's a scenario-based safety assessment methodology to evaluate the system's ability to respond in a safe way to all these different situations and conditions and the variations thereof on the road. Now, the UNECE, and especially the Working Party on Automated, Autonomous and Connected Vehicles, GRVA, already proposed guidelines how to perform such a safety assessment in a new assessment test method for automated driving. And they propose a multi-pillar approach that starts from scenarios. So scenarios are identified to describe what are the situations that the vehicle can encounter on the road, what are the typical variations thereof, and to use those scenarios to, at one hand, describe the operational design domain. So what are the situations that the system is designed for to operate correctly? And on the other hand, to develop the test scenarios that are used in this safety assessment to check if the vehicle indeed is capable to respond appropriately. Different test methods are being proposed, which will be used at the same time. So both from virtual simulations, which become more needed to deal with all these large variations, but still also a proving ground test to have the physical testing of the system, and real-world testing where we really put the system under test on the road to experience how the behavior of that system is. So that are 3 of these pillars. A 4th pillar is founded by an audit on what are the tools being used in the assessment, what is the safety management system that the manufacturer uses, and how do we actually conclude based on all the results of the different tests whether the system is safe or not. Then still we might allow the system, we might decide that the system is safe enough for deployment, but then still there is a feedback loop that needs to be considered. And that's the green box in this scheme in service monitoring and reporting, where we continue to keep track of the system during its operation to see if any malfunctioning might occur, or that we see scenarios on the road that we have not considered in the safety assessment. Now, this is very well developed a guideline on how to perform safety assessment, but it's not a regulation yet. And still, we also see, of course, that there are already a lot of regulations and standards out there that help us to develop safe systems. However, there are a large number of regulations. We know a lot of them from UNECE and from the European Commission. We will also learn today the regulations and standards and how to deal with that in Japan. But if we have those international regulations, then still there are also national and local laws that we need to abide to. So it's not only a large number on the international scale, there's still also a translation needed to the national laws, rules, and regulations. And then we talk about regulations and standards, so we also need to understand what is the role of international standards in this complete scheme of dealing with these regulations. And there are also a large number of standards, so which are applicable to our assessment. Yeah, and that it might be an open door, but it's very difficult to see the forest for the trees. And one of the main challenges is, if we know what are the regulations and standards that that we need to abide to, how do we operationalize them? And that brings me to Erwin. Erwin, thank you for participating in this meeting and as well. And please take us through regulations and standards and your view on that.
Yes, thank you, Olaf.
Erwin, you're muted.
Yeah, after 4 years with Teams meetings, it still happens sometimes. So I'm happy to tell you more about regulations and standards. And in order to do so, I will start with a timeline on the developments for this. So it all started with the Big Bang, very long time ago. And then a little bit later, in 1885, we had the first vehicle with an internal combustion engine. So this was an invention from Mr. Benz. And this is a picture I took myself in the Stuttgart Museum, Mercedes-Benz Museum. A little bit later, we had the first vehicle that was available to the masses. This was in 1908, the Ford Model T. So more vehicles entered the streets, and that's also where rules came into force. So more rules were adopted, and a major milestone regarding development of traffic rules and vehicle rules was the Geneva Convention in 1949. So this was the first international agreement, so to say, on traffic rules and vehicle rules. And many of the national rules that we have today are based on this convention, as well as the Vienna Convention, which was in 1968. So you can see this as an update of the Geneva Convention to further harmonize traffic rules and also vehicle rules around the world. And there's an important thing in both these conventions, and that's the concept of a driver. So a driver is also defined in such a way that it really needs to be a human behind a steering wheel. So clearly a driverless vehicle is incompatible with both these conventions. So that's also why some changes are needed, and I will come back to that later. So more vehicles, also more developments, and that led to also more safety systems. In the 1980s, we had the introduction of anti-lock braking systems. In the 1990s, we had the introduction of electronic stability control, and also adaptive cruise control was introduced at that time. So this further increased the safety of vehicles as well as also the comfort for the drivers. In the 2000s, we had the introduction of lane keep assist and also autonomous emergency braking. So you see vehicles became more and more automated. Still, drivers were in control, but this naturally would lead to what we call self-driving vehicles. So that was the promise in the 2010s, so to say. So maybe you still remember Volvo, the Drive Me research project. So they announced they wanted to drive in 2017 with around 100 vehicles in the neighborhood of Gothenburg, fully autonomously. Also in Singapore, autonomous vehicles were announced, for example, buses, but also taxis for last mile transport of vehicles. And you also know what Elon Musk said. He said it repeatedly, that autonomous vehicles were just a year or so away. And this is now really part of the Tesla lore, this claim. What do all these three things have in common? It's that it didn't happen. Question is, why didn't it happen? And that's for that I need to go a little bit further with the timeline. In 2021, there was a major milestone for the regulations. I already mentioned that driverless vehicles were actually impossible if we, according to the Geneva and Vienna Convention. This was the first regulations for the type approval of automated driving systems, or in particular automated lane keeping systems, for which the system is responsible of driving and not the human anymore. Of course, when the system is activated. And I want to go a little bit deeper into this regulation. So, for example, it says in 5.1, the fulfillment of the provisions of this paragraph shall be demonstrated by the manufacturer to the technical service. And if we then go a little bit deeper, 5.1.1, it says the activated system shall not cause any collisions that are reasonably foreseeable and preventable. Well, I think we can all agree this is good. System should be safe, it should not cause any collisions that we think it could prevent. And of course, this should also be demonstrated. The problem here, however, is it does not really explain how should we do this. So that's my first takeaway that I hope you remember after this talk. It's unclear from this regulation how this should be operationalized. But okay, developments are still going on. So if we go a little bit further in the timeline, then in 2022, there was a regulation on the EU level. It's regulation 2022-1426. It's on the type approval of automated driving systems. And again, this is a major milestone because the UNR 157 is only for automated lane keeping systems. And this is for type approval of automated driving systems, also level 4. So it goes a little bit further. And again, if we go a little bit deeper into this regulation, for example, 7.1, it says that the manufacturer shall demonstrate that an acceptable degree of consideration has been given to functional and operational safety. Again, I think we can all agree with this, that this is a good thing. The problem here, however, is that, again, it's a little bit unclear what it means. What does acceptable degree mean? And that's also my second takeaway. It's unclear what exactly the required level of safety need to be. That's not specified in this standard. Or in this regulation, I have to say. And I already mentioned standards, and that's maybe what can help us here. The regulations are not really clear how it should be operationalized. Also, level of safety is not clear. Can standards help us here? So maybe, because there are many standards. There are over 500 automotive standards. For example, ISO, SAE, IEEE standards, UL, ANSI, and also on UN ECE levels. However, most of these standards address ADAS, so Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So this concerns SAE levels 1 and 2. So that's not what we are really looking for today. But there are some notable exceptions. So, for example, we have ISO 26262 on functional safety. We have ISO 21448, also known as safety of the intended functionality. We have the ISO 3450X series, which is really dedicated to SAE level 3 and above. And it's on test scenarios of automated driving systems. We have almost published the ISO 8800 on the safety and artificial intelligence. And also UL 4600, which is on the evaluation of autonomous products. So there are clearly some developments here. Now, what I can do is go into each of these standards and explain what these standards are about, but then this meeting would take much longer. And I think it would also be a little bit boring, and I hope that this will be a little bit more entertaining than that. So I will not do that. If you want to know more about these standards, there's a lot of information, luckily, on the internet on this. What I want to focus on today is some of the things that are maybe we should have more attention to that. And that's these standards are not the answer to everything. Of course, they answer some things, but not everything. And my third key takeaway for this meeting is it's very nice that we have these standards, but it's not clear which standards should be adopted by the regulations. So as an example, this UNR 157 that I mentioned before, regulations for automated lane keeping systems, it does not mention ISO at all in the main part. So it's not really clear what ISO, maybe it doesn't even require to comply with any of these standards. It does mention ISO a bit in the annex of the regulations, but in the main part, it's not mentioned at all. My fourth key takeaway is that these standards focus on the process, so it's not really clear how to operationalize. And just to give you an example, in ISO 26262, it really focuses on a structured and systematic development process to ensure functional safety. And ISO 21448, again, it describes the process and rationale used to ensure that the risk is sufficiently low. Another example, if we look at ISO 34502, it says the relevant scenario space shall be specified. Yes, that's of course very important, but then it does not say how to do that. So it's not really clear when do you comply with such a clause. This is not really criticism from my side to these standards. I also think it makes sense. It doesn't always focus on the operationalization, because that would also kill innovation. Still, I think there are some gaps here that needs to be addressed before we can further enhance automated driving. Then my last key takeaway is actually a repetition. As I mentioned, in the regulation, it is not really clear what the required level of safety need to be. And unfortunately, these standards do not really help here. It provides some guidelines, so UL 4600, ISO 21448, and also ISO 3502 provides some guidelines on this, but it does not give acceptance criteria. So it's still not really clear what is the required level of safety. So just to summarize, it's unclear how regulations should be operationalized. It's also unclear what the required level of safety need to be. It's unclear which standards are going to be adopted by the regulations, if any. And also the standards focus on the process, so it's also not straightforward to operationalize this. Then does that bring me to the end of this presentation? It could be, but I don't think that would be a nice ending of this presentation, because this is really about what is missing. And I think there are also lots of opportunities. So that's what I want to address next. Given these limitations, what are then the opportunities? But before doing that, Hiroki will give some answers on that. And also Hiroki will focus more on how does it work for specific countries. And I would like to first give him the floor before I proceed with some of the opportunities that I see. So Hiroki, maybe you can take it away from here.
Yes, thank you, Erwin. Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Erwin. I'm Hiroki Nakamura from JARI, and today I would like to introduce some Japanese regulations and standards related to AD safety, and also I will provide some hint to operationalize the unclear regulation and standards. So it's a great pleasure and honor to be the part of this meeting today. So this is the outline of my talk today. First, I will introduce the general structure of the automobile regulation in Japan and recent updates related to ADS. And then we'll talk about the standards in connection with the regulation and some examples or our achievement to specify some safety requirements. So this is a legal Japanese legal structure related to the automobile. So it doesn't matter ADS or manual driven car. So it's automobile in general. So there are 3 areas to be regulated. First one is automobile specification. So as a product, so the requirement for the type approval is also described here as a Road Transport Vehicle Act. And the second part is about the driver and the pedestrian. So this regulates about the preferable behavior or restriction of the drivers also and the pedestrian or cyclist. And the third part is about the Road Act or order of the road design standards. Then it specifies the road shapes like curvature and lane width and also the traffic signs and so on. So when it comes to the ADS needs to comply with the Road Transport Vehicle Act to pass or authorize the type approval, and also as a system driver, the ADS also needs to comply with the Road Traffic Act. And when a developer needs to design a specific ODD, they also need to refer the Road Act. So, and also I want to mention about the director of each act, that the Road Transportation Vehicle Act and the Road Act is directed by the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport in Japan. And also the Road Traffic Act is directed by the National Police Agency. So when it comes to ADS, and if the new modification of the regulation is required, we need to communicate with several ministries. So the legal system is complicated, and so, we need to communicate with several authorities to design or regulate the new laws for ADS. And next, I will briefly introduce about the ADS regulation in Japan. Oh, I'm afraid that's, yeah, okay. So first, ADS is defined as follows. In a road transport vehicle act in Japan. So automated driving system is defined as the device which can operate a car automatically and equipped with the necessary components such as sensors and also calculators and program, which means it defines as a replacement of a human driver. And also it requests ADS to replace all of driving tasks. So here it covers not only the perception and the prediction judgment, also the control under the condition where MLIT authorized. And also another issue is that the logger is required for ADS. And I think the structure of this regulation is that there are already a type approval system for the control part as a product of the manual driven car. So it only added some requirements for the perception and judgment part. And also in Article 48.2, an arbitrarily automobile equipped with ADS shall comply with the regulation. Here it also includes the Road Traffic Act. So as a driver, ADS shall also comply with the rules. And for the next. Oh, one moment. Okay, here I would like to mention also about the UNR 157 automated lane keeping system. Well, as also Erwin has mentioned, I think many of the participants already know about this, and it is also accepted in Japan, Japanese regulation, and so also the Japanese government has accepted other nearly 100 UNR acts. And as Erwin also mentioned, the Geneva and the Vienna Convention, also Japanese government also signed with these international agreements. So in general, the status is similar in Japan compared to EU. And here I would like to add some topics related to the recent update on ADS regulation in Japan. So last week, it was announced that guidance for ADS safety assurance. And well, I thought this might be a good trigger for today's discussion, but unfortunately, it wasn't something I expected. But still, I think there are some points to be clarified that the major contents are extracted here. So there are mainly 3 topics. And the main issue for the government for now is to shorten the authorization procedure for mainly for the field operational test. So not ready for our personal own vehicle yet, but the issue is that the simplified authorization procedure that previously it took about 11 months to authorize some field operation tests in Japan, because it was all checked by the national government. So there were some limited workforce, but they are aiming to shorten to 2 months and distribute the tasks to the local government. So that was one big change. And also they have qualified some categorization of ODD. So of course, the developer can arbitrarily design the ODD, but still they have categorized into 3 groups. So one is ADS in a limited space. So traffic participant could be limited and the fixed route. And the second category is ADS in a mixed space. So no limitation for the traffic participants, but still there are limitations for the route. And the third group is ADS in the mixed space and flexibility in the route selection. So it includes the robo-taxis and personal owned vehicles ADS. And the important issue is that for category 1 and 2, the government requests to list up all potential risks or scenarios comprehensively. And also it's explicitly mentioned about ISO 26262, 21448, known as SOTIF, and 34502 are recommended to be referred. So the main intention is still intend to accelerate the field operation test and the demonstration nationwide, but there are still some description about the safety. And the problem is that still the requirements are qualitative, and how and the criteria is not qualified yet. Okay, next. And yeah, what I'm impressed compared to this document, the EU regulations specify the VRU parameters at least. So I checked that a pedestrian up to 5 km/h needs to be covered for the safety test, and also the cyclist up to 15 km/h is explicitly mentioned in the EU regulation. So I think it's, well, maybe there are some critics, but still I think it's a big challenge to mention about the parameter of the VRU. Okay. So next I will talk a bit about the organization body of this regulation and standards. And as Erwin also mentioned, the standards support ADS developers to specify some safety requirements. And if the regulations and standards conflict, of course, there are some problems. So this is the structure of between regulatory and the standard bodies in international level and a domestic Japanese domestic level. That WP29 and GRBA is handling the regulation related to the ADS, and in a domestic level, MLIT is responsible for this layer, and JASIC under the anti-cell is mainly supporting the activities, and JARI, we are more indirectly supporting the MLIT by providing some research data to JASIC. On the other hand, the ISO is main body, of course, for the international standards, and there are also SAE, IEEE, ASAM, and so on. And from the perspective of ISO, JISC is organizing committee where JSAE, JAMA, and JARI also belongs to. And the METI is supporting this activity. And I'm also a member of this committee and attending ISO Working Group 9 as an expert. And one important thing is that JAMA, Manufacturers Association, and JARI, our institute, is supporting both sides, standardization and the regulatory side, and trying to align or bridge the gap between regulations and standards. Okay, so from here, I would like to give some Sakura achievement as an example to bridge the gap between a qualitative requirement of the regulation standards to make it more specific measures. And before that, this is my interpretation of the standards in a structured way. So the top goal is, of course, the social acceptance, and we divide into the two trees. That one is about the traffic rule compliance, and other is about the free of the unreasonable risks. So we consider that traffic rules should be compliant with the ADS, and beyond that, we also need to cover some extra scenarios. And in this area, we also subdivided some scenarios into inside ODD and ODD boundaries, and also for the inside ODD, there are some situations in the nominal driving, critical conditions, and the critical conditions, and we limited the ISO 34502 scope only into this red line area. So our scope is to specify the scenarios that ADS could be exposed within the ODD, and our goal is to provide the specific test case derived from the foreseeable scenarios could be exposed. And more in a specific manner that, so there are 3 steps to provide the concrete scenario for the test case. That one is about, the first step is to provide a qualitative interaction pattern as a functional scenario. And the second step is to provide the parameter space for each functional scenario as a logical scenario. And then the third step is to select some specific parameter combinations as a concrete scenario. And for this scheme, we are preparing some specific scenario catalogs and also for parameterization process. So, So this is the main achievement of Sakura and JAMA work, that we have provided some safety evaluation framework with the dividing driving task into 3 independent tasks: perception, judgment, and control, and defining the critical situation for each task. And if you combine all of the possible scenarios, you will get the all possibly exposed scenarios. And this framework also, of course, reflects in ISO 34502. And if you click or if you capture this QR code, you will also get the detailed document. And I'm afraid I'm running out of time, so I will skip the detail of each scenario. But one point I want to mention is that as a traffic disturbance scenarios, party car scenario, we have summarized as a urban 58 scenarios. And I think this is most comprehensive and specific scenario catalog at this point, as far as I checked. And also recently we have updated for the pedestrian scenarios. And 2 more points I want to mention is that the scenarios are still qualitative. So when we want to connect with the specific virtual platform for the simulation, we are developing the Sakura database as a tool chain. And also, I understand that there are some unclear points for the regulations and the ODD, and we are also developing some tool to extract the related regulation and scenarios from specific ODD. So if user select some specific route as an ODD, you will get the relevant scenarios. And also, if you check each scenario, you can also check the traffic rule relevant for that scenario. So that's what I think that's one important achievement from our side. But still, I understand that there are, if you get some specific sentence from the traffic rules, still they are qualitative and sometimes it's unclear, but still it will help. So this is a concluding remark from my presentation, that legal structure is really complicated, but still, yeah, we are trying to interpret and make it possible for the specific safety evaluation, and also the safety requirement in the regulation are mostly qualitative, so we are trying to quantify them. And JARI and of course TNO is providing some scientific evidence for the standards and regulations. But of course, I wouldn't say that we have completed our work, and still there are many remaining problems to be solved. Okay, so I'm a bit extended, but yeah, thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Hiroki. Then we will continue with Erwin. So please, Erwin, go ahead and give us some upcoming opportunities.
Yes, I would like to do so. And I think there's also a nice bridge with the presentation from Hiroki. So as I ended my talk with the things we miss on how to operationalize, and I'm glad to see that already in Japan a lot of work has been done to further specify what it means to comply with the regulations. And also what does it mean, all the relevant scenarios. You also did a lot of work on that. And that also brings me to my first opportunity. So what we see in the automotive domain is we have some regulations, then we have even more standards, and there's even more science available. And this is not in every domain, but for the automotive domain, this is definitely the case. So what we need to do, well, first of all, maybe there are some more things that we need to do research on. But another thing is to harmonize that and make standards, or at least some form of harmonization based on what is available in the science, and then make that available or part of the regulations. So that's some work that we need to do. The second thing I want to mention is there are already some great initiatives going on to do that. So, for example, we have a European project, and this is just 2, but I could mention 10 projects. These are just 2 that TNO is also involved in, Sunrise Project and the V4Safety project. And there are also many, there's a lot of work going on for developing regulations. And also standards. So, for example, ISO discussions, also in the United States, there's the Automated Vehicle Safety Consortium, and they publish a lot of content in the recent years on this topic. Also, we have ASAM, for example, standardization of many things. So there are a lot of initiatives. So I'm actually quite confident that we will have a decent progress in upcoming years. Another thing is, I think we should start simple. So it's, and I mentioned Elon Musk mentioning the autonomous vehicle being just 1 year away. I don't think this is just 1 year away. I think this will take a long time. But if we start simple, I think automated driving is not that far away. And I think this is also the way to go. So I imagine that we have, let's say, an operational design domain in which this automated vehicle operates, which is very small, maybe just one dedicated route, or in a confined area, for example. And I call this the ODD generation 1. And then gradually, when we also gain more experience in developing such system, but also in demonstrating the safety of such systems, we can increase the operational design domain. So we have operational design domain generation 2, and so on, and until we end up with G5, for example, and then we cover everything. Not sure if it will go in that way, but I imagine that the best way to proceed is just to start in a simple environment. The last thing that I would like to mention is just a bit of advertisement for the streetwise position paper that is out since last month. So you can download it from this link. It does not provide all answers to the questions that are still there. Unfortunately, I would say, but it provides some answers regarding how to operationalize the standards and the regulations. So if you want to know more, please go to this link. Also, if you read this, I'm happy to take any questions. You can always contact us. And that is also the last slide. So if you have any questions, I'm very happy to take them, or of course, Hiroki.
Also, the recording of this session will be shared with everyone who registered up front. I would like to thank you all for listening. Special thanks to the 3 speakers, Olaf, Erwin, and Hiroki. Thank you very much. I think it was very interesting. 2 more sessions are coming up on the 27th of June and the 11th of July. And I hope I see you there again. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.